Hello, welcome to a very special video. So I just wanted to wrap up this week of videos which are not the usual sort of videos that I'd been doing up till now. They don't fit the usual schedule because, as you know, I've been suffering from throat problems that were brought about as a result of a cold, and definitely things are getting better. It's still there a bit, but certainly by the time I put this video out, normal service should be resumed. And so what I thought I would do as a treat specifically for people that have been real, like die-hard long-term viewers of the channel, is do a real throwback video. So in the early days of the channel, one of the very first series I did was something I think I called No Hand, No Land. So it was a series of videos, and the premise was that it started out with a deck that had been printed in something called the Magic the Gathering Official Strategy Guide. So I'll just show you the top of this book. There we go. Now this came out originally around the time of 5th edition, so it featured a lot of cards from 5th edition, but also everything back from there. So 5th edition, if you don't know, was a pretty big core set, had a lot of cards in it, and as a consequence, because back then core sets were 100% reprints, had a lot of reprints in it, and several Magic the Gathering books that I was reading at the time revolved quite heavily around, from that period, around building decks that featured a lot of cards from that particular core set. And in this book there was this deck called No Hand, No Land. And for the series I started off with the deck and with what I would consider to be period specific artwork and cards, and then through a series of episodes expanded out and added to a No Hand, No Land toolkit other cards from Magic's history that did similar things. They weren't exactly functional reprints, but functionally they were either better or in some cases worse than the original cards, because I just wanted to show a sort of evolution, if you like, of No Hand, No Land strategy. The second thing the series did was it was open to suggestions from viewers, and a number of my viewers back then put in some really interesting suggestions for modifying the deck beyond the No Hand, No Land. There were things like adding Infect, adding cards that would leverage the fact that through this process, you're through discard, what you're doing is you're ending up with a lot of cards in graveyards. So those sort of things. So either cards which would improve the deck in some way, or cards which would leverage aspects of the deck. So what I thought I'd do for this episode is I'd go through one of each of the cards of the original deck as it was printed in the official strategy guide. Now the official strategy guide, as I said, revolved around certain sets of the time. It came out in, 1997. So yeah, around the time of 5th edition. And obviously I recorded the video sometime in the early 2010s. So I'm going to go through one copy of each of the cards that was in the deck. I'll mention how many copies of the cards were in there originally in the actual deck itself. I've also got some land artwork from 5th edition. This is all white border stuff. So if you're triggered by white border cards, I would look away. Well, it's too late. It's already on the thing. But yeah, it was all white border cards. And there are a number of other sample decks in here. There are permission decks. It's a very interesting book if you can track it down. A really nice sort of period piece. I've got a number of these books actually, and they're really lovely to just flick through and see what was on people's horizons at the time. So yeah, we're going to flick through, and I'll do this once at this level of zoom. As I said, I'll include a link anyway to the series so you can see how it developed over a period of time. But also what I'm going to do is when I get to the end, I'm going to zoom in so we can see the artwork up real nice and close. So we get the best of both worlds here. So we have, and I'm not going to read these out because we should be at pretty high quality, so I'll leave them on screen for a good period of time, but I will read out the cards and how many were in here. I keep closing the book, which is super annoying. Okay, just try and do this. So we have Abyssal Spectre, as you can see here. It's been on the camera for the last 5 minutes, and there are actually 4 of those in the original deck. Oh dear, that didn't go so well. Notice the a new styly grid here, also for long-term viewers of the channel. There were 4 copies of Blight. So you can see already we're getting to the land destruction. There were 4 copies of Conquer. So in case you haven't realised and haven't seen the series, this is a black-red deck, and that gains control of a enchanted land. It's a land enchantment. There were 2 copies of Disrupting Scepter, so yeah, 2 copies of Conquer, 2 copies of Disrupting Scepter. So this is part of the discard package. And of course we've got to actually have some way of winning here. So there are 3 copies of Fireball. Also can be used as removal. We've got Incinerate in the deck, and there were 3 copies of that. We've got Knight of Stronghold, and there's 4 copies of that. We've got Mind Warp in the deck, so another hand disruption card. There's 3 copies of that. Mind Stab Thrall. So there were 3 copies of that. Two copies of Moleworms. So blowing up lands. A couple of copies of Orcish Squatters. And no hand destruction deck at the time would be complete without 4 copies of Stone Rain. We've got 4 copies of Sulphurous Springs, which fixes for black-red here. This is if you remember, the dual land that taps for colourless mana, or you can tap it for black or red, but it will actually deal 1 damage to you. And then we've got some rather nice 5th edition lands here. I think I've got 1 of each of the pieces of artwork in the appropriate colours. So in total there were actually 12 swamps in the deck. And I'm going to zoom in the artwork in a moment actually, so you can see this a bit closer. But at the moment we've just got one of each of those. And there were actually 8 mountains in the deck. So there we go. And these are all from 5th edition. So let us zoom in and really take a close look at the artwork here. So let's see what we can see here. So take a little bit of adjusting, and I may need to move the camera relative to the sheet of paper, or vice versa, just to try and I can still leverage the grid. Oh yeah, look at that. Wow. So different when you start to look these real close. So let's just go back through purely on the artwork now. I need to spend special attention to the keeping these, trying to keep these straight. There's Blight. I've also got, I think, probably 4 what would have been, I don't even know if they referred to them as pauper back then, but one of the books I've got that was sanctioned by Wizards of the Coast at the time actually has some decks that are built with only the commons from, I think, 5th edition. Which was pretty interesting to see. It was a big set, but I don't know if pauper was a term that they used back then, but that's what essentially they are. So another thing, you know, in the future, again, if anybody I don't think I ever showed those on camera. So if that's interesting, something that people will be interested in seeing, then yeah, I'll dig them out. And they were from, like I said, I'm pretty sure they were all from 5th edition. And I think I created 4 on the list. There was I think one in each of the 2 colours, but I could be wrong. I'm going from memory here. I'd have to dig the book out to remember. Of course, Fireball. I think the other thing when I did the series and the toolbox or the toolkit that I created, in a couple of instances I also bought alternate artwork, or like artwork from later sets. So I think I've got, you know, a later version of Incinerate, and possibly somewhere I've got the Dual Land in different artwork actually. Yeah, some of this artwork's pretty creepy. It's always nice when you're getting close to the stone rain artwork and you can actually see that there's a castle there. It isn't just loads of stones. Okay, so let's see how these look. So the swamps are, the artist for this is Andrew Robinson, in case you didn't spot it on the first pass through. Might be not so clear on these cards. We were zoomed out. So I've got one of each of the 4 pieces of artwork on camera. I'm trying to think what to call this video. I think I have to call it something like No Hand, No Land Artwork Revisited. Move on to the mountains. And this is John Avon artwork. And then the last one. Wasn't that nice? So hopefully you enjoyed that. I certainly enjoyed this, putting this video together. It's made me very chill. Thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future video.